Hi everyone, we're here reading the write-up for Sphere and Sundry's Venus in Taurus number 3. So it's the talismanic materia ritually crafted on a remedial grade Venus in Taurus election for resetting the nervous system, relaxation, and calling forth a softer, richer, and more verdant life. Excellent for the enhancement of quality time, whether alone or partied, to self, lovers, friends, family, animals, and children, facilitating relational intimacy and genuine connection. Sweetness, embodiment, togetherness, and indulgence in a bottle. Draws incredible food, treats, money, gifts, experiences, and freebies too. So let's scroll down through some of these offerings, all of them looking quite wonderful and appealing as usual. And here is the write-up. Often manifestations from a series begin washing upon the shores of lived experiences before a working is even conducted. Sometimes as soon as we start discussing specific elections, getting louder as base materials are required, altar wares sourced, and so on, until the celestial seeds are sowed in ritual, winding down to a fallow slumber before getting kicked into higher gear by incubation chambers cracking open during each dedicated launch cycle. This particular election, Sphere and Sundry's third Venus in Taurus after the first, self-titled in 2019, and Empress in 2020, has been a long time coming. So long that it's been a literal birthday gift from Austin on my last solo return, because I wanted one that badly. The commingling of multiple malefic influences compounded by transient and fixed evils, always a factor, Algol from 24th to 28th degree, took talismanic and remedial grade elections for Venus in Taurus off the table for 2021. Combust the Sun, square Saturn, Uranus, 2023, Rahu and Uranus, and 2024, terribly combust with Uranus, in our opinion, per Sphere and Sundry's standards of practice. How is remedial grade defined exactly? Keep in mind that Western astrology, for lack of better term, is only now in the process of reassembling some of its remedial faculties, and that remediation has not been part of Western astrology for some time. Still basically isn't. One aspect of how Kaitlin Coppock solves for this, resident electional architect, but more importantly, likely the most influential astrologer of the forefront of reintegrating the remedial tradition with Western practice, is by looking to the finest currents within the Jyotish tradition, which have maintained a continuous remedial practice since antiquity. Rule is, if a configuration would require or even benefit from a remedy in the natal context, because that configuration is causing harm, it cannot, by definition, serve as a remedial grade supplement for the same sphere. This is especially the case when a malefic afflicts the target power of the operation, in this case Venus, the moon, the rising 1 hour, the midheaven and 10 hour, and the descendant 7 hour. Considerations also extend, in the best of practice, to the ruler of the target power. The nodes are considered the big bads in the Vedic tradition, and any planet conjunct them will be afflicted by them. The North Node's afflictions include insatiability, excess, delusion, dissatisfaction, self-centeredness, mental and physical illness, obsession, greed, lying, obfuscation, hauntings, drug use and addiction, reputational damage, and in a metaphorical if not literal sense, riding dirty. Are these qualities any of us want contributing to our relationships, matters of the heart, affecting our venereal spheres? Not we. Magic that promotes new and existing problems in the life and psyche are not what Sphere and Sundry aspires to provide. Honestly, the growing pains from even top-notch talismanic and remedial grade magic can be enough of a challenge to metabolize. The philosophy is in deep alignment with Marsilio Ficino, whose work is the closest thing to remedial wisdom the Western tradition has to offer, who has a horror of and finds pitiable and foolish the practitioner who places even the greatest benefic upon the North Node. This from 3 Books on Life, critical edition and translation by Carol V. Casque, likening the dragon's head to the devil himself. Regarding the Picatrix, here is some good documentation. But we're at risk of this write-up becoming more of a treatise on the nodes and remediation than a tribute to She Who Bears Fruit, for which I blame authoring it during Bardo season and pervasiveness of Rahu's influence upon my own lunar sphere. Deepest apologies. I shall strive to be light and quick with the remaining points, saving deeper explorations for book, and return with greater gratitude to her for whom we gather today. Note that there is no such thing as a perfect election, and concessions must always be made. The goodness must offset and overcome the bad. Uranus by itself is a volatilizing factor which increases the likelihood of negative manifestations when egged on by actual malefics such as Saturn, Rahu, and the condition of combustion. By itself, an otherwise excellent election, so long as Uranus is not too close to the target power, Uranian co-presence need not be a deal breaker. The spontaneous and energetic expression of purely beneficent manifestations are not a major concern for any well-judging wearer, and the ancients would not have been aware of its placement in the horoscope. To tie a bow around the remedial aspect, it is important for clients to understand the difference between remedial-grade talismans and those which are not, because it renders the majority of sales copy and claims about their effects at worst untrue, or at best partial portraits. A whitewashed report of what a customer can expect over time, which drives the transaction but obfuscates what comes after. How one uses and applies a true remedy is very different from how one can apply magic in general, especially with a malefic edge, for instance, passive application to one's body. It is a fair and valid thing to use Rahu for its magical effect with purpose and intent. It'll make bigger, more voracious, wealthier, and technologically immersive, though greedy, selfish, deluded, dissatisfied, and corrupted. Modeling Sphere and Sundry in all aspects but its electional standards is to miss the entire point. A client must be informed in order to discern. The election, June 26, 2025, having been decided in October of 2024, presented a long runway for Venus in Taurus III sinks to Vogue Open. April 10th hosts the first documented evidence of truly meeting Buddy, a dear friend who would enrich the experience of Venus in Taurus III's creation cycle and lead the way to the talismanic image which marks the series. The first time he was spotted by my beloved aunt, one of my absolute favourite people who was visiting, pointed to an older foal with a bright pink collar at the far end of the yard. How bizarre, we thought. The next, he emerged from the trees and approached Lucian with his wonderful caretaker and friend, Corinne, playing in the grass. The deer got closer and closer, prompting them to pack up and began walking back to the house, but Buddy followed. And he stayed. The collar had either fallen off or been removed by the people who raised him, but we figured it must be the same foal we'd recently seen since the fur was indented all the way around its neck. And because he acted like no other deer we had ever met before. He had absolutely zero fear of humans and boldly approached anyone he came across for a nuzzle and a pet. He was loitering outside the house multiple times per week, pushing his wet little nose against Austin's office door, between snacking from the butterfly bush. He was named Buddy, in honor of the tiny buds starting to emerge from his head, and because he was so intent on becoming our friend. And I can't resist a double entendre. The first time we met Gail, he literally booped her in the butt from behind. "Dear" was one of Lucian's first words. And he'll walk right inside the house and hang out if an open door presents the opportunity. But fondest of Buddy anecdotes aside, on April 13th, a few days after making his furry acquaintance, a client posted in the community requesting a future A client posted in the community requesting a future subset for platonic friendship. That, coinciding with the appearance of Buddy at the same time formulating for Venus in Taurus began, felt like an early sync. For any unaware of astrological associations, I should mention that deer and doe-eyed characteristics are classic Venusian and Taurian significations, not being too far off from cows in terms of being foliage eaters with multiple chambered stomachs and, fun fact, even-numbered toes. And the Picatrix calls for the use of deer and stag imagery for Venus talismans specifically. Thus, deer materia from an actual deer friend presenting itself was too on the wet little nose to ignore. Google AI, at the top of search results, reported deer could be fed oats. I found out later that they should not be fed oats. AI spreads misinformation all the time, so please always dig deeper. So I began feeding Buddy oats and saving deer lick bowls, mix Venus's earthly delights in later, alongside deer's tongue herb, a Venus and Mercurial plant ally. I also took the Furminator and helped remove Buddy's winter coat. He was so appreciative, which would become a later addition to the friendship subset. As the working neared, and in the time since, camaraderie and easy, immaculate social vibes have been undeniable. The night before the working, since it was a middle-of-the-night one, most of the team who volunteered enjoyed a company-sponsored sushi feast and hung out in the hot tub before staying over together on site, catching up with a team member past and just generally reporting a really lovely time. Sleepovers have been confirmed as a notable manifestation of the series since, in that classic girly way. Good food, fun music, the warmest memories in the making. In media manifestations, discovering Amy Pochler's podcast, Good Hang, and rewatching Girls Next Door alongside the companion podcast, Girls Next Level, for the first time in like 20 years, specifically coming across the heavy petting episode the night before launch, have all been pretty in your face. The commingling of girl-on-girl friendships and the types of fun friendships, friendship activities, girls and young women tend to get to enjoy with one another, even when men are around, letting them participate in the wavelength. Animal-human friendships and adult-child friendships have all been supported and bolstered by this particular Venus in Taurus energy. One aspect of the girlishness, which Venus in Taurus 3 is far and away the most girly series we've ever put out, comes from the heavy, almost exclusively feminine placements in the Election, paired with its extraordinarily fresh, almost newborn Cancer moon. It's all the beneficence that Venus and the moon bring to relationships, making them closer knit, more nurturing, more enriching, and more fun, without any of the bad things like mean girlism that causes so many to fear or avoid relationships with women or catty gay men in the first place. Music and art, but mostly music, have been another sync. Spontaneous sing-alongs, talking about musical artists, finding, creating, and enjoying new music have all been heavy themes. And pink and green and peach and pastel. Oh, the pink and green, peach and pastel of it all. In the lead up to the launch, Sam Wax, friend and helper with the Fundamentals of Astrology program, was staying with us for her annual visit when we decided to spontaneously watch Wicked, mentally bookmark the sunset and rainbow in the opening scene of the trailer, which I had never seen and whose story I was totally unaware of. And boy, did it get any more pink and green and stories of female and animal friendship than that. With music, Ariana Grande also happens to be a Venus in Taurus native. Earlier in the summer, with production for Venus in Taurus newly underway, we hosted the Sphere and Sundry's annual pool party, which the Astrology podcast accidentally turned into a famous pool party, which some of the North Star campout crew joined last minute as a conference after party of sorts, which ended up lasting a whole wonderful weekend. Almost everyone who came having an absurdly dignified Venus. Before that, can you tell this series is non-linear and chaotic in that girls feverishly telling each other's stories with way too much to share kind of way? Austin's aunt, Janie, was in town along with his parents, and I broke out the one and only copper beating bowl that had been talismanified during the Venus's Earthly Delights working to make mousse au chocolat in the Thema Mundi kitchen, which is on pre-order for round 5 through October, by the way. Exactly 7 eggs were cracked and beaten into the bowl, whisked along the surface of enchanted inscriptions. The mousse was served after a meal of bœuf bourguignon, Jupiter's trademark meal, to an unsuspecting public, in terms of being fed magically infused food. No one was told. I wanted to see what it would do, if anything. As we finished up dessert, we heard thunder roll and went outside to observe one of the most gorgeous, immersive sunsets I might have ever experienced in real life, and for the first and only time ever from work, observed a rainbow. Wow, Austin joked. That mousse was really powerful, and he didn't even know it had been made with the talismanic beating bowl. The gorgeous pink sunset with rainbow motif reoccurred the night before launch, but from Buddy's abode, prompting Austin to remind me to include the moose story in the write-up, which was, at that time, yet to be written. Venus is nothing if not fashionably late. Speaking of Austin, let's share his description of the election. The time chosen for this operation called Venus in Taurus, her own domicile, breaking the horizon hours before dawn with near maximum brilliance. The morning star rose here in her own hour, and with the silver support of the waxing moon. The moon, whose night it was freshly reborn in Cancer, having just appeared in the night sky during the sunset which preceded the operation. The kindly moon, in the house of her joy, waxed into a supportive sextile with great Venus, putting the two in an easy harmony. The lunar chariot, a leisurely platform from which to strew petals the colour of peach. There's a theme of newness and renewal here, of fresh shoots, of uncorrupted vitality and goodness. Venus is in the sign of her spring and rising before the sun, up early so as not to miss a minute of what the day might bring. Venus also had the planet Uranus as guest in her domicile, who does not tolerate the dull wit of time, but instead insists on the unspoilt moment. The moon, too, is fresh from her union with the sun, reinvigorated and eager to set out across the wheel once again. Together, these factors play a song of renewal and rediscovery, of opening our eyes to the budding joy, friendship, opportunity, ease, and love about to bloom again. In addition to all of the above, Taurus and benefics in Taurus are always good for money and getting, enjoying free stuff like food, upgrades, gifts, and experiences. This series is incredible for nervous system regulation, rest, and relaxation. Some might even call it lazy, and it moves at the speed of molasses, taking its sweet time to do literally anything it wants. Use it to cut off more aggro influences at the pass once you're home or ready to relax. It really brings quality to the experience of time, whether spent alone or with loved ones, family, friends, lovers, pets. It feels like a cross between Venus in Taurus 1 and Butter Ocean, with absolutely none of the haughty pretension of Empress. It's sweet and prioritizes connection over acquisition of power and status. But it does ultimately draw power and status, because that's just one of the things Venus in rulership does, especially Taurus, regardless. It's just more organic and less forced here. This series is also deeply verdant and connected with the beauty of nature. It would be an extraordinary series to apply when being outside, engaging with the beauty of the natural world and all its wondrous creatures, which brings us back to the topic of Buddy for a moment. Tony got a lot of deer sinks too, by the way, and mention that while becoming his friend made for a profoundly magical spring and summer, fall is bringing about, well, another type of sorts. Deer are wild animals and should never be raised by people because being too comfortable with humans lead to potentially attacking them down the line when deer have become gigantic and dangerous and likely very, very sharp. Buddy bloodily shedding the velvet from his antlers was a stark reminder that while Venus and the moon rule and exalt in Taurus, it is Mars's detriment. Baby deer, moon, and female deer, Venus, are one thing, but a post-pubescent male deer, Mars, in rutting and hunting season, is never a person's friend, and I'm hoping Buddy survives this year and many to come without anyone or him getting hurt. In retrospect, we should never have fed and encouraged his comfort with people. We should have tried to scare him away in hopes he could reincorporate with the nearby deer population. But I, and we, did not know better at the time and only came to learn more as issues began to present very recently after talking with a local wildlife rehabilitation education center called Wildlife Images. Unfortunately, because of diseases and potential for harm, no one can really provide sanctuary for Buddy in our area, which is part of why hand-raising deer is short-sighted. A portion of proceeds from Venus and Taurus III was donated to Wildlife Images on September 13th, 2025. In Buddy's honor. But we're not going to end on that bummer note. As a palate cleanser, here are some of the other animal friends that have made their way into the Sphere and Sundry cinematic universe. Poquito, the miniature horse who made Centaur spray of the first Jupe juice. Bear, beloved companion of 15 years, muse of Saturn in Aquarius grief. This Scorpion, Sumo as a baby, Sumo modeling as Big Ass Forever Totes, Sumo being cute, getting bigger, the Quicksilver Tongue Peacock sighting, Sumo trying to come to Norwalk and helping with the Exalted Venus 2 and swag shoots, the Black Mars-Jupiter Doggo, Ultrabox Bacco, though it does not do this magnificent creature justice, pairing with other, and now let's read about pairing with other series and activities. Venus's earthly delight gets along with just about anything, but will slow and make lazier whatever it touches. It cuts down on aspirational and productive instincts, so its most appropriate use is during downtime, before bed, romance, and leisure. Lunar Ceres and Thema Mundi, other Venus Ceres, Asclepius, and, to a lesser degree, solar wavelengths can all play nicely. Martial energies are contra-Venusian, but perhaps worth experimenting with for polarity's sake, especially in the bedroom, or balance, like 99% Mars to Venus ratio to cut down on heat and antisocial side effects. Exalted Mars 2 Ferrum Noctis would likely be the most compatible Mars given the trine from Capricorn to Taurus. Please make your own cocktails and report back to client community. Additional side effects include hugs, cuddles, and kisses, maybe even some color, music, and nature-related synesthesia.